And welcome to the podcast, Wendell's World of Sports, speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas, giving my thoughts and opinions about everything that's happening with Georgetown Hoyas. You can find this type of material. You can find this episode on my YouTube channel. You can go to Wendell's World in Sports, the podcast, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast. You just download Wendell's World in Sports and enjoy the most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to. But as of right now, I'd like to dedicate about a half an hour or so speaking about the loves of my life, my favorite basketball team, my favorite sports team of all time, married with them till death do us part, through good, through bad, through right now. Speaking about being over 40 years of a loyal, passionate Georgetown basketball fan, from John Thompson II, from John Thompson III, up to Patrick Ewing. Speaking about the players like Eric Sleepy Floyd, John Bebe Duran, Eric Sky Shelton, Michael Graham, Eric Smith, Patrick Ewing, Sleepy Floyd, Billy Martin, David Wingate, Horace Broadnax, Perry McDonald, Reggie Williams, Allen Iverson, Robert Chilcherill, Dwayne Bryant, Mark Tillman, Jonathan Edwards, Bouba Kaal, Victor Page, Jeff Green, Otto Porter, Markel Starks, man, a whole synopsis in terms of what my love and support are for the Georgetown Hoyas goes way, way back. So, till death do us part, through eternity, my love will always be number one for my Georgetown Hoyas. Speaking about what happened, though, this past week, falling to, I guess, 0-8, remaining winless in the Big East, winning a losing streak now at 8 games, losing to Connecticut 96-73 in a game that really wasn't that close, as the score would indicate it, and then losing on the road this past Saturday against Butler. The loss at Connecticut, I really wasn't going into the game. I really didn't have too much expectation of that, because I knew that we were going to get our clocks cleaned. I knew that we were going to get our butts whipped. I knew that we were going to lose pretty badly. We never played well at Stores. Last year, I think UConn put 90-something points on the board. But watching that game, it was as worse than I ever imagined. What you're speaking about last week's game against Connecticut on the road. That was a team in Connecticut that could have put 110 points on the board if they wanted to against us. If Georgetown didn't shoot like 52% from the three-point line on 21 field goal attempts, they would have lost that game by probably over 40. If you're speaking about Connecticut, who played well. I mean, they played well when you're speaking about 5 players in double figures, when you're speaking about Adam Zaunga scoring 19 points, Isaiah Whaley, Jordan Hawkins adding 15 points each, R.J. Cole, the transfer from Howard. I hope our transfer from Howard is just as good as the one that Connecticut got in R.J. Cole. 14 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Tyrese Martin scored 13 points. They were dunking, they were driving, they were Harlem globetrotting us. It was as bad as I thought it was going to be, and then even more so. Amidu Muhammad, for our team, led Georgetown with 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Only had one turnover, which was excellent, in 30 minutes. In fact, for Georgetown, he looked like the only player athletically and physically who could have belonged on the same floor with the players from Connecticut. But, when we speak about it, I always spoke about, if we're going to have some success, if we're going to be able to turn the season around, and when I say turn the season around, I'm talking about winning a few basketball games. The key players for our team that are going to have to perform on a consistent basis is going to be Colin Holloway, Dante Harris, Aminu Muhammad, and Donald Carey. And against Connecticut, they were overwhelmed. Colin Holloway finished with 11 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 4 rebounds in 30 minutes. Perimeter defense poor. He worked hard, tried hard. I think his interior defense is a lot better because of his size, 6'6", 220 pounds. He's not the most athletic guy, so asking him to stay in front of quick, fast, athletic front court players, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and above, who can put the ball on the floor like Connecticut has, for him is going to be very difficult. But I think that he can use his size, meaning 6'6", 220, to fare much better in the post. But again, against Connecticut, way out of his league in terms of athleticism is concerned. 11 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 4 rebounds in 30 minutes. Donald Carey scored 10 points on 6 of 12 shooting, 2 assists, no rebounds, and 4 turnovers in 30 minutes. He was inconsequential. And Dante Harris continues to struggle from the field. He scored 7 points on 4 of 14 shooting, no rebounds, 1 assist, 4 turnovers in 32 minutes, especially when you're speaking about Dante Harris, a guy whose grit, whose toughness, whose determination, whose competitive nature should never be challenged. I mean, that guy's going to give you 110% all the time. All the Georgetown players really are going to give you 110% most of the time when you see these Hoyas diving on the floor and doing that type of thing. So the effort is always going to be there for the most part. But Harris, when you take a look at his size, even though he might have some of the speed and quickness, his inability to shoot consistently from the outside and to finish inside because of his lack of height and uber athleticism. He's a good athlete, but he's not an athlete that can overcome his size disadvantage when he's going up against bigger, stronger, larger, more experienced players that are in the Big East and others. Is continuing to struggle. So outside of some bright spots from Ryan Batombo in the game, 2 of 7 from the field, yes, but you know what? 6 points, 6 rebounds in 22 minutes, and Caden Wright going 3 for 5 from the three-point line. Georgetown basically received nothing in help off the bench. Timothy Ego F.A. way out of his league in the interior, going up against a multitude of long, tough, physical, skilled, experienced Connecticut interior players. So, look, it was a game where it's kind of like we knew what was going to happen. UConn ran past Georgetown, outscoring them 27-6 on the fast break, dominated the board throughout rebounding Georgetown 40 to 28, 19-9 on the offensive board. When Connecticut would miss, it would just be a matter of playing volleyball up against the rim, offensive rebound after offensive rebounds. And again, it didn't come down to want to, it didn't come down to effort, it didn't come down to the passion and the effort for Georgetown to try to get the rebounds, but it was just a matter of Connecticut just being way too talented, way too athletic for them to continue to try to hold its own, speaking of Georgetown, on the offensive and defensive glass against Connecticut. But as I mentioned before, I knew it was going to be bad. The Connecticut win against Georgetown with the second biggest margin of victory in the series, the largest victory for Connecticut was 94-70 in 2004. It looked like a mismatch. It looked like Gonzaga or Duke or Kentucky or Kansas playing against a Division II team in competition and competitiveness. We'll see what happens when UConn comes to Georgetown, but we've never been good playing them as Stores. As I mentioned before, Georgetown lost last season 98-82 with Stores. They're 1-9 against Connecticut when playing as Stores. Now, hey, they're 11-9. They're a lot better when Georgetown plays them in Hartford. But when you're speaking about the history of Georgetown playing Connecticut, even when you're going all the way back to Big John, the only victory that Georgetown can claim in Stores was in February of 2013, a 79-78 overtime victory. But it is what it is against Connecticut, and all the negativity and all those reports and everything that came out about, ESPN came out about something about how Ewing is failing to turn the program around. Candace Buckner wrote an article that past weekend speaking about his Georgetown irrelevant, and I was like, man, I'm glad they kind of got that out of the way before they play that Connecticut game, because, you're speaking about you writing pitchforks and weaponry that would have been applied to Ewing in the basketball program after that performance. Again, I knew it was going to be something where this is going to be pretty bad. But I didn't even know it was going to be that bad, just in part because Connecticut, they played pretty well that night. They did play pretty well. Wendell's World in Sports, speaking about the loves of my life, the Georgetown Hoyas. Then on Saturday, they played a much better, more competitive game against Butler, lost 56-53. Better game defensively, of course, when you're speaking about the points differential between what they gave up against Connecticut and how they did against Butler, held Butler to 56 points, 38% shooting overall, 6 from 26 from the three-point line. Yes, a lot of those shots that Butler missed were wide-open shots, but hey, a miss and a miss. Georgetown caused the Bulldogs from Butler 14 turnovers. But then again, offensively, Georgetown, complete opposite in terms of offensive proficiency, at least in the first half against Connecticut, didn't bring that with them to Indiana, the state of Indiana, to play Butler, where they shot 36% from the field, 21% from the three-point line. When you're speaking about 4 and 19, outside of Iminu, the team was 15 for 46 from the field. That's 32% for the most part. If you were watching this basketball game, if you watched this entire basketball game on an entertainment level, this was for family and friends only. If you were a college basketball fan, if you claim to be a huge college basketball fan and didn't watch this game, I forgive you. You still get to keep that moniker. You still get to keep those credentials, because this was a game for only friends and family and for people like me and those who watched the game, huge fans of the Georgetown Hoyas who are going to watch them regardless of how poorly, how ugly, how inefficient, how inept they look from time to time, game to game. 4 minutes into the game against Butler, the two teams combined to shoot 4 of 14 from the field in a 4-4 tie. 4 minutes later, not much better. The teams added just one more field goal between them. Butler went on an 11-0 run for the remainder of the half and then led 32 to 26. And then at the first 5 minutes of the second half, Butler went on a run where they led 42 to 30. And I was like, oh, Lord, oh, man, please don't tell me. I mean, I can understand getting blown out by Connecticut, but please, after this, please don't get embarrassed, and please don't get run off the gym by this Butler team. But the Hoyas didn't quit. The Hoyas fought back to close the game to within 47-46 with 8:02 to play, but then went over 3 from the field, gave up a turnover on his next 4 possessions, and then the last 8 minutes, both teams again showed complete incompetence offensively, with Butler going 3 for 11 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3 with 3 turnovers, but Georgetown said, match this. 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from the 3-point line, 3 turnovers, total number of points, Butler 9, Georgetown 7. If Georgetown would have won, I wouldn't have cared how ugly it looked. I don't give a damn. I don't care if Georgetown won the basketball game 1-0. As long as we win, that's what I'm talking about. So positive from the game, other than the fact that we were competitive and really had a chance to win on the road after being down by 12 in the second half. Again, the boys, the team not quitting. Aminu Muhammad led the Hoyas 16 points, 6 of 12 shooting, 6 rebounds, a pair of steals. Donald Carey, I thought, had a pretty good game with 12 points, 5 boards in 38 minutes. The Hoyas, after Dickie Simpkins was speaking about, man, they got to get the ball inside. They get the ball inside. Too many quick jump shots. That's not the Hoyas deal. Mainly he was talking about Dante Harris on that one. But when they concentrated on pushing the ball, getting the ball in the interior, they scored 32 of their 53 points in the paint. So, other members for the team, again, when I speak about they need to step up, they need to be better, Dante Harris, I don't want to say anything bad about the young man. I hope he's doing well in school, and I know that hopefully that when he graduates from Georgetown, he'll have that degree, and he'll be able to be a really productive member in this society. He has some good traits in terms of the type of person that he is and the type of competitive spirit that he has. If he can take that from the basketball court and apply it to the life after basketball, he's going to be a big success in life. But he still can't shoot consistently. Still can't finish at the rim consistently. He shot 3 for 11 from the field overall against Butler, 1 of 4 from the 3-point line. Finished with 7 points. Speaking now about 3 of his last 4 games, is this a trend? We spoke about, is he banged up? I mean, is this a sophomore slump? What is going on? 3 of the last 4 games, as I mentioned before, for Georgetown to be successful, I feel that Dante Harris needs to be one of the main reasons why. It needs to be one of the main key players in terms of playing well with consistency. Not saying that he had to be all Big East, not saying that he had to repeat the week he had at the Big East tournament last season, but he had to be much, much better than this on a more consistent basis. 3 of his last 4 games, he's shooting under 33%. In 2 of those games, he's shooting less than 30%. You're not going to win. I don't give a doggone if you're playing Villanova or Butler or UConn on the road or DePaul or Howard or UMBC or Longwood or St. Joe's or San Diego State or anywhere else. You got to do better. You have to do better, and Dante knows that. Colin Holloway against Butler. I remember speaking about Colin Holloway, that he needs to give us a consistent 16 to 18 points every single game. He needs to average 16 to 18 points and give us efficient shooting, efficient work. He can't go for 25 one game and then go for 40 other. He can't shoot 9 of 10 against a top 10 team like Villanova and then go 3 of 13 against a team like Creighton or Butler. Well, against Butler, he scored 6 points, 3 of 10 shooting, missed a couple of contested layups, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, and doing this in 38 minutes. And as I mentioned before, I want to see consistency. Can he be consistent? The staff has been talking about, Holloway is that guy that can get points in a multitude of ways. He can get it by driving. He can get it by finishing at the rim. You can give it to him in the post, and he can do some work there. 15, 16, 17 feet. He's got that elbow jumper. He's got that foul line jumper. He's got that corner jumper. And then he can even hit some three-point shots off of penetration. Well, take away that 25-point game against Villanova. In the last 4 games, he's averaging 7 points, shooting 9 to 33 from the field. That's 28%, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. Outside of maybe, I don't know, not even Dante Harris because he's too inconsistent, but there's nobody else but maybe the exception now of an ever-expanding offensive game from Aminu Muhammad. We don't have anybody else. We don't have anybody who can get the ball on the perimeter and do something. Donald Carey, as I mentioned before, is a guy who's crafty, he's experienced, but his game is mainly about 15 feet up to the three-point line. He's not going to be able to penetrate on a consistent basis, semi-consistent basis, and make plays for other folks or feed the post. And when we do feed the post, especially with Ego Efe, if he's not wide open, all by himself underneath the basket for a dunk, then the chances of him scoring or doing something efficient with the basketball on a consistent basis is not there. The same thing with Ryan Batambo, who still hasn't filled into his size, yet being a freshman at Georgetown. Malcolm Wilson doesn't have the girth. He doesn't have the strength to finish at the rim, even off of penetration from a Holloway or from a Muhammad or from a Carey from time to time, from a Tyler Beard or something like that. Jaden Billingsley consistently doesn't finish at the rim, being undersized at 6'7", going up against the taller, more athletic players that he's playing against in the Big East. So, when you're speaking about guys who can penetrate and guys who can score and those type of things, the 2 best players that we have are Colin Holloway and Aminu Muhammad. And so far, they haven't been able, especially speaking about Holloway, not so much Muhammad, who games continue to evolve and get better, but for the most part, that hasn't been happening with Colin Holloway. Wendell's World in Sports, speaking about the love of my life, the Georgetown Hoyas, coming off 2 losses this past week to Connecticut and to Butler. So the next 3 games at home, they're they play Seton Hall on Tuesday, tomorrow, whenever you're listening to this episode, St. John's on Thursday, and then Providence on Sunday. So I'm hoping and I'm praying, glass half full, that, man, we can at least go unrealistic 2-1, somewhat realistic 1-2. I mean, shouldn't we be able to beat? I mean, we've got to, under 3 games homestand, win one of these games at the very least. Win one of these games. I know Patrick Ewing Jr. came out and said some things about, hey, we need the fan support and everything. Hey, man, the team's got to play better. I mean, we'll support you and do all those type of things, but you got to win. You got to win. The students have come out en masse. They've done a great job for a team that's 6-12, 0-7 in the Big East. But, man, you got to win. You got to play better. You play better, they will come. So against Seton Hall, St. John's, Providence this week, 3 games in 5 days. Give us a reason. Come on, team, give us a reason. And if you're speaking about the game next Wednesday against DePaul, this could be the most important game in the coaching career of Patrick Ewing. Because let's just take a worst-case scenario. Let's go glass half empty on this. If they lose at home to Seton Hall, St. John's, and then Providence, I don't give a damn if they lose by 1 or give a damn if they lose by 100. You're speaking about a team going into the game on the road against DePaul who could be on an 11-game losing streak with a record of 6-15 overall and 0-10 in Big East play. Then what's going to be the narrative? Then what are we going to be talking about? Because as bad as it might look, well, that's being winless. There's all the records now about we've never been this, we've never been that, and we haven't lost as many games in a row. With all the speaking and all the talking and all that stuff going on, hey, man, we're only 1 game outside of DePaul is 1-9 currently in the Big East. They've lost 9 of their last 10. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They play Xavier this upcoming Saturday before playing Georgetown, so they could be coming into this game 1-10 in the Big East on a 5-game losing streak. I mean, that game is all important. Everybody talks about it. When are we going to win another game? Well, I'll tell you one thing. If we don't win against DePaul, even though we're on the road, if we don't win against DePaul, yikes. Yikes. For those who are yelling and screaming and clamoring about Coach Ewing losing his job right now, if we finish 0-12 after playing Seton Hall and St. John's and Providence at home and then lose against DePaul, care if we lose by 1 against DePaul. I don't care how. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. I think that will be the point of no return in terms of salvaging anything this season if we lose to DePaul, if we don't beat one of these 3 teams that we're going to be playing at home. And even if we do, I mean, we can't lose to DePaul. We can't lose to DePaul. We just can't lose to DePaul. Wendell's World of Sports, speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas. So last weekend, Washington Post columnist Candace Buckner, she wrote a story about Georgetown basketball and asked the question, is the program irrelevant amongst college basketball? And some of the highlights of the story, she was speaking about Georgetown at the time, 6-10, had never started 0-5 in the Big East, not in 1979 when John Thompson Jr. led the Hoyas as one of the original 7 teams in the inaugural Big East season, not in early 1999 after losing to Seton Hall, that dropped the Hoyas to 7-6 overall and 0-4 in the league, that Thompson felt compelled to drive to his assistant's home and tell him to take over. Not in 2017 when JT3 lost his first 4 conference games. In the fall was really ugly when the home announcer wouldn't, after announcing the starting 5, would announce that JT3 was the coach, and there were boos and all of the negativity going on with Pop sitting right there in the arena. So the last half a season or so in the era of JT3, and we take a look at some of the success that John Thompson III had at his tenure at Georgetown, wouldn't we take some of that? I mean, if we could, if we could take Patrick Ewing's 10 years, if we could take Patrick Ewing's next 5 years after he finishes this season, and we said that it's going to come close to what JT3 did as far as the coach with Georgetown, especially in his first 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years with the Hoyas, I think we take that in a heartbeat. I think losing to VCU in the first round, I think losing to Ohio in the first round of the NCAA tournament, I think even with maybe the exception of losing to Florida Gulf Coast in a tournament, because we did come in at the number 2 seed at that time, and many people were prognosticating that we would be one of the dark horses to win the championship. I think there were a lot of folks out there right now who would say, you know what, if we could be the number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and if you could tell me right now that in 2 or 3 years, regardless of who the coach is, that we could be the number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, we'll take that, and we don't care what happens after that. There was a little bit of a run there where Georgetown was making the NCAA tournament. They were losing in the first round, or if they made it to the tournament, they would win the first round, or they would lose to a lower seed in the second round. And that's really started the grumbling and the mumbling of, is JT3 really going to be the coach for this team? Is that Princeton offense really going to be working? Can we recruit the players that is going to make Georgetown a national power? Well, at one time, John Thompson III had Georgetown as a national power. He had Georgetown in the Final Four. Wouldn't it be nice to have some of the failures right now of the coaching career of John Thompson III at Georgetown? I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I would love to have our expectations be, you know what, we're going to be a number 3 seed. We're going to be a number 5 seed. We're going to be a number 6 seed in the NCAA tournament year in and year out. We're going to be upset that as a number 6 or number 7 seed that we're going to lose to a Davidson, which still kind of stings. But man, some of the things that we used to bitch and moan about, boy, I wish we could bitch and moan about that right now, because losing to Davidson and losing to North Carolina State and losing to those teams in the NCAA tournament is much better than what we're doing right now. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that right now. So the story by Candace Buckner was speaking about, Georgetown is irrelevant, and, all of these times when Georgetown started poorly, that there was this outroar, there was this outrage about what's going on. This is terrible. This is unacceptable. This time, she was mentioning the fact that Georgetown loses to Villanova. They're now 0-5, and for the most part, no one really cares. Everyone's like, no big deal. So what she's saying is does that mean that Georgetown has fallen into irrelevancy when all of a sudden our expectations are not what they used to be? As you might know, as everybody might know for the most part, when anybody plays sports, that sometimes a coach would be yelling at a kid, and you got to do better, and you got to do better, and the kid sometimes would put his head down, and the assistant coach would run over to the kid and say, hey, you know what? Be thankful that he's on your ass and he's yelling at you, because the minute he stops doing that, That's a signal. That should be a signal to you, and that's a signal to me and the rest of the team that he's given up on you. So take his getting on you on a consistent basis and yelling at you as almost like a compliment to say that you can do better and he cares. The minute he stops when you start making mistakes, that's when you should worry. So basically what Candace Buckner is saying is because no one is yelling and screaming for the most part from the Georgetown side of things about the way the season is going for Patrick Ewing in Georgetown, does that mean that they have given up and they don't care on Georgetown? I beg to differ on that. Here's the thing, though. She wrote a good column, Candace Buckner, on the Post. Here's the thing that I'm going to have to take umbrage and disagree with her on. When she was mentioning the fact that patience over panic should always be appreciated, but since Georgetown has not been what it was for several years now, there's been a hole in the region's fabric of basketball. And she wrote this, why Howard coach Kenneth Blakeney told me this week that he can envision his team and his gym becoming the focus of DC hoops. He said it very carefully because he didn't want to offend the other schools, but he pointed out the obvious. Georgetown and Maryland, too, no longer resemble the programs he remembers when he was growing up in Washington, D.C., when all that mattered was Big John's Georgetown Hoyas. Okay. I've got news for Coach Blakeney. Coach, Howard will never, ever come close to being on the same level as Georgetown. I don't care how irrelevant, insignificant, bottom out, rock bottom the Georgetown basketball program becomes. They will never fall down to the level of Howard. And Howard, even on Georgetown's worst day, will never come close to being the program of Georgetown University. So, Coach, please stop. Please stop. If you need some evidence about how bad Howard basketball program has been, they haven't had a winning season. When I mean winning season, I'm talking about a team that has finished their season overall over 500. They haven't had that type of success in 21 years. They've had 9 winning seasons. 9 winning seasons in 40 years. Over the past 20 seasons, 11 times they've finished with less than 10 wins. Coach, please stop. The women at Howard University are absolutely beautiful. It's a historic black college and university, amongst the top of the top in terms of the historically black colleges and university. There's a lot of great things about Howard University, without question. As I mentioned before, the most beautiful women in any place on earth. When you're speaking about college campuses, I don't give a damn if you're speaking about Chico State. I don't care if you're speaking about the schools in Florida. I don't care if you're speaking about the big schools with 50,000 people like Texas. I don't care about all these other schools, USC. I don't care. The best, most beautiful looking women walking on a college campus is at Howard University. I don't care. Sorry, North Carolina A&T. Sorry, Norfolk State. Sorry, Spelman. Sorry, Prairie View. Y'all can't compete with the beautiful women. I've been on that campus plenty of times when I was back in the day, a youngster at that time. There ain't no way. There's no way that comes close that the women anywhere else can compete in terms of beauty, in terms of intelligence, and strength than the female, the Nubian sisters, shall I say, walking around Howard University. That in return, doesn't mean that they're going to have anywhere close to a successful college basketball program. And their history of playing college basketball in the NCAA, 51 seasons. They've never won a postseason game. Not an NCAA tournament game, not an NIT game, not a CBI game, nothing. So please, Coach Blakeney, I appreciate you, but no, you're never going to become on the same level as as Georgetown University. Never. When I was growing up in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Georgetown, Maryland basketball programs, yeah, man, they were the most important teams behind the Washington football team in the region. When you're speaking about the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Fairfax County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, all of them counties heading up to Howard County before you got to Baltimore. You had the Georgetown Hoya's basketball program under John Thompson and Lefty Drizel's Maryland basketball program were the most important teams behind the Washington then Redskins. They were more important than the Washington then Bullets. They were more important than the Washington Capitals. They were more important than University of Maryland college football. They were more important than the Baltimore Orioles. We didn't have the WNBA. We didn't have anything else. So yes, those teams, speaking about Maryland and Georgetown, were the most important teams of that region. When you're speaking about John Thompson and Lefty Drizel, they were bigger deals, more important, well more known than Joe Gibbs, Earl Weaver, Bobby Ross, Dick Motta, John Riggins, Cal Ripken, Jeff Rulin, Rick Mahorn, John Riggins, Rod Langway. I don't give a damn. Al Bumry, Eddie Murray. I don't care. Adrian Branch, Lenny Bias, Reggie Williams, David Wingate, Keith Gatling, Larry Graham, Patrick Ewing. They were bigger names in the area than those professional players. And as you're speaking about how rich the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area was for college basketball back in those days, UDC had Earl Jones and Michael Britt at the time. They won, the 1984 Division II NCAA basketball championship with like a Loyola of Marymount with coached under Paul Westhead type of style. You know, Michael Britt and Earl Jones were the Hank Gatherers and Bo Kimball in terms of, what they were doing, putting points on the board and adding excitement down there at USC. You had solid basketball programs at George Washington and American and Virginia. College basketball back in those days were far and away some of the greatest things. But guess what, Candace? That is not going to replicate itself ever again. Ever. Not just with Georgetown, but also with Maryland and anybody else. It's a whole new world. Washington, D.C. metropolitan area is a whole new place in terms of population, in terms of diversity, in terms of everything. Man, you can't swing back the clock, 40-something years in the past? We're not living in the past anymore, Candace. It would be unrealistic. It would be unfair to expect that Georgetown and Maryland and American and George Washington and UDC and Howard and Catholic at the Division III level could, as far as basketball programs be concerned, reach anywhere close to the importance that they had in the Washington, D.C. metro area back in those days. Man, Maryland played in the ACC, man. They played against Duke and North Carolina and Virginia and Wake Forest and North Carolina State and Georgia Tech when the ACC right up against the Big East were one of the best conferences in the country. Man, Maryland, we had the privilege, we had the honor to see Lefty Drizel and then Bob Wade go up against Dean Smith and Coach K and Terry Holland and Jim Valvano and Bobby Cremens. Maryland played against D.C. area native Johnny Dawkins. Not Michael Jordan. Back then he was known as Mike Jordan for a couple of years. James Worthy, Ralph Sampson, Dennis Scott, another guy from Oakton, Virginia. Derek Wittenberg, Sidney Lowe played at DeMatha High School. Tommy Amaker from Fairfax, Virginia. Randolph Childress, Kenny Anderson, Mark Price. I mean, these guys were unbelievable. And for the most part, these guys weren't one and done. Johnny Dawkins stayed 4 years. Mike Jordan stayed 3 years. James Worthy stayed 3 years. Ralph Sampson stayed 4 years. Dennis Scott stayed 2 years. Derek Wittenberg and Sidney Lowe played 4 years together. Tommy Amaker played 4 years. Randolph Childress. Kenny Anderson played 2 years. Mark Price played 2 years. So these rivalries, they were playing Maryland, and Len Bias stayed for 4 years. And Keith Gatling played for 4 years. And Ernie Graham played for 4 years. And Albert King played for 4 years. And we developed rivalries. We developed strong interest because of these great teams and these great players that we were seeing year in and year out. We got to know these guys. We got to see these guys grow. We got to see Len Bias go from a guy who was averaging like 4 points or 5 points a game his freshman year to being one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player in ACC basketball history. Georgetown played in the Big East. They played against Villanova and St. John's and Syracuse and UConn and Boston College and Providence when Georgetown was playing on ESPN, and they mattered a lot more. Speaking about the conference, they were going up against Rolling Massimino and Lou Carnesecca and Jim Boeheim and Jim Calhoun and Gary Williams, Hall of Fame coaches, longtime coaches who were coaching there 15, 20, 25 years. Georgetown played against the Chris Mullins and the Ed Pickneys and the Otis Thorpes and the Pearl Washingtons and the McLean brothers and Raphael Addison, Walter Berry, Sherman Douglas, D.C. area from Spingard, Mark Jackson from St. John's. We went up against these guys. We played against these guys year in and year out. Walter Berry out of junior college played for 2 years. Chris Mullin played for, 4 years. Ed Pinckney played for 4 years. Pearl Washington played for, I think he played for 3 years. Mark Jackson played for, I think, 3 or 4 years. So, look, man, we got a chance to have these rivalries, these memories, build upon build. Patrick Ewing didn't stay 6 months and play for 1 season at Georgetown and then leave. The same with Reggie Williams. The same with David Wingate. The same with Otto Porter, who stayed 2 years. Allen Iverson played 2 years. But when I was growing up, and I fell in love with the game of basketball because of Georgetown, and the reason why it fortified my love for Georgetown, it was because of situations like this. Nowadays, I mean, I hate to be the get off my lawn guy, but nowadays it's completely different. Nowadays, it's it's a whole new ballgame, especially now coming into the new era of NIL and coming in with the transfer portal. It's a whole different ballgame. So yes, when you're speaking about back in the good old days, you're going to say that Maryland and Georgetown somehow that's a blight, that's a blemish on what's going on with those programs right now because they're not what they were back in the early to mid to late 80s. That's not going to be coming around anymore. Christian Laettner isn't going to be spending 4 years at Duke in the year of 2020. Bobby Hurley isn't going to be spending 4 years at Duke in the year 2020. Tim Duncan is not going to be spending 4 years at Wake Forest in the year 2020. Those things aren't happening. So, it's the way it is. It's the way it is. So that's my deal right there. She's talking about, Georgetown won the Big East tournament last season, becoming the first 8 seed to ever do so. So because of that, this season should have been one of progression. And instead it's been regression. But also, let's remember that Georgetown lost a lot of key players from that team. Remember, Georgetown going into that season, they were predicted to be near the bottom of the conference because they lost to Kinjo, and they lost McClung, and they lost LeBlanc, and they lost Yurt-Seven, and they lost Jagan Mosley. So this team that was going to be coming back, this team was predicted to be near the bottom. And this was supposed to be a rebuilding season for Georgetown last season. They had Jamarco Pickett, they had Javon Blair, they had Chudier Bile, and they had Qudus Wahab. All 4 of those guys who were major contributors to what the Georgetown Hoyas did, making it to the NCAA tournament and having that magical run, not just in the NCAA, not just in the Big East tournament, but also in the second half of the season when they came off of the COVID suspension. Those guys who are no longer with the team right now, they played huge roles in terms of the success for Georgetown. So when she's speaking about this season has regressed, did she take a look at any of the preseason expectations from those who follow the sports and for those who write about the sports? Because I didn't see anywhere, when you're speaking about the Big East Conference, I didn't see anywhere where they had Georgetown ranked anywhere higher than maybe 9th out of 12 teams. Many of them had them ranked 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I don't know where. I mean, basically, for a lot of folks, we're right where we're supposed to be. Now, maybe we're supposed to win more games than 0 at this point, but Georgetown finishing last in the Big East this season, according to many experts who follow this conference for years, that's not a surprise. So when Candace was speaking about, it's been a regression, well, it might have been a regression in terms of what you might see on the basketball court, but in terms of the expectations, what were your expectations for this team? I mean, your expectations weren't going to be they should have made the NCAA tournament, right? I mean, if you had those expectations, then that's foolish. I've said this before starting the season. If Georgetown could make the NIT, man, I'd be dancing in the street like Martha and the Vandellas and dancing on the ceiling like Lionel Richie if they could do something like that. Now, I didn't expect them to be this bad, but I mean, I think in some areas they have regressed in terms of Dante Harris. Hopefully, if he was a lot better, we would have won some of those games. I think the loss of Trey King was humongous in terms of what we could do. So, yes, there were some expectations in terms of how we played on the court that has taken a hit. But, I mean, this talking about we regressed to what? What were we supposed to be ascending to? So when I speak about this, and I'll end the podcast, and I'll end speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas with this. And I want you to get this some thought too. Because, look, every program is different. Every program has their ups and downs. Every program has their obstacles. Every program has their expectations. Every program, especially if you're speaking about a program and expectations for a year and year and year. But I keep thinking about, when I speak about Georgetown and Patrick Ewing and some of the negativity, and he should be fired, and they're going nowhere, and the program's in the toilet, and he hasn't gotten the job done. When I hear that type of talk, I think about, man, Memphis, the Memphis Tigers, and Penny Hardaway. As I'm recording this, they're 11-8, sixth place in the AAC. Now they've won 2 games in a row after losing 3 straight about 10 days ago, and in Memphis, and even nationwide, as far as basketball scribes are concerned and basketball fans are concerned, head coach Penny Hardaway, a guy born in Memphis, guy went to Memphis State, one of the best players ever to come out of Memphis, him and Keith Lee, old time. But head coach Penny Hardaway, he's under a lot of pressure about not living up to expectations. And there was a little tense moment that he had in terms of when a reporter, after a loss to SMU, asked him, are you embarrassed by what's happening with the program? And this is what he said.
Penny, have you ever lost faith that you can get this done?
At Memphis?
Yeah. In the first half like that, when it's unfolding, is it embarrassing? And
I think the one thing I can say to this media, because this media gets kind of fucked up sometimes when it comes to me, we don't have our full roster. Y'all know we don't have our full roster. Stop asking me stupid fucking questions about if I feel like I can do something. If I had my roster like they did, then I feel like I can do whatever I want to do. I'm coaching really hard. My boys are playing really hard. I'm not embarrassed about nothing. We have 4 freshmen starting. Y'all need to act like it. Act like we got 17 to 18 and 19-year-olds out here trying to learn how to play against 22, 23, and 24-year-old guys. Come on, man. Stop disrespecting me, bro. Like, don't do that. I work too fucking hard. I work way too hard for that. Y'all write all these bullshit articles about me, and all I do is work. We got young kids on the floor. They got young kids on the floor.
So again, he was asked if he was embarrassed about how the season is going, and you heard his response that he's coaching very hard, and the players are playing really hard, and he's not embarrassed about anything, and he has to remember, you guys have to remember that he doesn't have his full roster, and if he did, that he would be doing everything that he needed to do, and they would be much better record-wise. And you also have to remember that he's playing with 4 freshmen, 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are trying to learn and how to play against 22 and 23 and 24-year-olds. Well, here's the interesting thing. This is the second year that Penny Hardaway has brought in the number 1 recruiting class. Better than Kentucky, better than Duke, better than all the Blue Bloods. The second time in 3 years. The class of 2019 had James Wiseman, Precious Achiuwa, Boogie Ellis, who was being recruited by Georgetown, J.D. Jeffries, Lester Quinones, Malcolm Dandridge, Damon Ball, who was being recruited by Georgetown. So that squad, as you speak about, James Wiseman was considered the number 1 recruit in his class. He was the best player coming out of 2019. And that team was supposed to be some dark horse's pick to win the national championship. This was the Michigan Fab Five, and all this stuff rolled into one. When you're speaking about how many 5-star recruits was in that recruiting class for Memphis. Well, Precious Achiuwa was a top 15 5-star recruit. Boogie Ellis decommitted from Duke. He was a 4-star, top 40 recruit. J.D. Jeffries was a 4-star, top 50 recruit. Lester Quinones was a 4-star, top 100 recruit. Malcolm Dandridge was a 4-star, top 100 recruit. Damon Ball was a 4-star, top 110 recruit. All of these guys, when they played the one season, now James Wiseman only played 3 games because of NCAA violations. He left the program to get ready for the NBA draft. He was drafted number 2 by the Golden State Warriors ahead of LaMelo Ball. Precious Achiuwa only played 1 season. He was a late first-round pick by the Miami Heat. Boogie Ellis played 1 season at Memphis, and then he transferred to USC. J.D. Jeffries played for Memphis 1 season, and he transferred to Mississippi State. Quinones and Dandridge are still on the team. Malcolm Ball played 2 seasons, and then he transferred to TCU. The one season where those guys played on the same team together. Again, I understand that James Wiseman, the shining star of that recruiting class, only played 3 games, but overall they went 21-10, 6th place in the AAC with a 10-8 conference record. And before COVID hit, which ended the college basketball season before the NCAA tournament started, there was talk that there was, that Memphis was on the outside looking in, that they were one of the top 4 or top 8 teams that wouldn't make the tournament. So to say a team that was supposed to be a dark horse, ranked in the top 15, top 20 at the beginning of the college basketball season, that was supposed to be a dark horse to win the NCAA tournament, that was bringing in one of the most impressive recruiting classes in the past 10, 15 years. The fact that they went 21-10 overall, 6th place in a non-Power 5 conference like the AAC. Yes, I know Houston is really good and they've done a lot of things, but this ain't the Big East, this ain't the ACC, this ain't the SEC, this ain't the Pac-12, this ain't the Big 12, and this ain't the Big 10. It's the AAC. So to say that Penny Hardaway was a disappointment with the expectations that were put up against him would be fair. The class of 2021, he brought in Imani Bates and he brought in Jalen Duran. Again, he had the #1 recruiting class, and not only that, Bates and Duran were supposed to be transformative, impactful college basketball players. Not in 3 years, not in 4 years. We're speaking about right now. Especially if you're speaking about Imani Bates. As a sophomore, he was supposed to be in the same category as a prospect as LeBron James and Kevin Durant. I mean, this was a guy who shocked everybody. He committed to Michigan State and Tom Izzo early, but then he decommitted, and everybody was just on the assumption that he was going to go to elite, or he was going to go to overseas, or he was going to go to one of the pro leagues for the younger folks before going to the NBA. And many people said that, you know what, if as a sophomore up there in Michigan, if he was able to go to the NBA or get into the NBA draft, that there was a great pick. There was a great chance that he would have been a lottery pick. I'm not speaking about lottery pick as in 12, 13, 14. I'm speaking about in the first 5 picks after his sophomore season in high school. That if Imani Bates then would have declared for the NBA draft and put his name, and would have been eligible, that he would have been a top 3, top 4, top 5 picks. Well, his first season at Memphis, not doing so well. Not doing so well at all. And scouts are already starting to question whether Bates' decision to attend Memphis was the right move, or should he have just gone to the one of the developmental leagues for the NBA. So again, Hardaway is starting to have some difficulties again at Memphis. What would have been your reaction? What would have been your thoughts? What would have been your opinions of Patrick Ewing if he went off the same way that Penny Hardaway did in terms of, hey, coach, what's going on with your team? You're regressing. We saw that Myron Metcalf and ESPN wrote that article about you're not being able to turn the program around. Candace Buckner is asking the question, is your program irrelevant? What's happening? What's going on? This, that, and the other. Folks, what would have been your response if Patrick Ewing would have gone off like that? What happened if Patrick Ewing said, man, look, man, we got hit by COVID, right? I've got 4 freshmen that I'm relying on. 4 freshmen, 2 sophomores, and a couple of transfers that I'm relying on, right? My best big man, stabbed me in the back, and his pimp took him over to Maryland, right? Trey King, we all know about that situation. Blindsided me, we weren't ready for it. Okay, we've got some obstacles right now. If I had my whole team with me, if I had the team that I thought I was going to have after we played last season, that I'd be doing much better. That I'd be right in the mix. That I'd be doing this. I'd be doing that. Stop asking me these fucking stupid-ass questions, right? Stop all this bullshit about what you're writing against me, right? Stop all this nonsense. What happens if Patrick Ewing, with that tone, with that anger, the same that Penny Hardaway showed in that press conference, what happened if Ewing did that? What would your thoughts and opinions be about that? What happens if Ewing at any time says, look, man, I've got Ryan Matombo, I've got Aminu Muhammad, I got these young guys, and I'm going up against guys who have played in college basketball 3, 4, sometimes 5 years. What do you want from me? We got hit by COVID. We still have guys struggling from COVID. We got guys who are injured. What do you want from me? You know what's happening. You know what's going on. What happens if Patrick Ewing used that as an excuse? What would your thoughts and your opinions be about that? That's just something to think about and ponder as we move on toward the season. But, man, tomorrow night, Tuesday night, whenever you're listening to this podcast, Seton Hall, we got to get it done at home. Hopefully we can get it done at home Wins, losses, yes, I want to win. I want to win badly, but man, I want to see Aminu continue to develop. I want to see Dante, if he can get out of his slump. I want to see Colin continue to try to get better as being the number one scoring option on the offense. I want to see Ego Fa do something. I want to see Ryan Batambo continue to improve. I want to see if Tyler Beer can cut down on his turnovers. I want to see all of those things. I want to see progression. I want to see something positive. Win or losses right now, hey, man, like I said, get a win, fantastic, but I just want to see some progression and some real good reasons why Patrick Ewing can come back for his sixth season, which is going to be his ride or die season, regardless if you want him to come back or not. So, Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World in Sports. You go ahead, you take a look at my podcast. You go ahead, you download my podcast, your YouTube video, the YouTube channel, Wendell Wallace, up and running. Go ahead, subscribe. Wendell Wallace, Hoyas for life, Hoya Saxons, love my Georgetown Hoyas till death do us part. Let's go Hoyas.